Hello, happy Monday. Welcome to today's live. So, what's the subject for today's live? Well, it's going to be Perm. And I've done a lot of lives and videos on Perm, but I thought another intro basically of what exactly Perm is and when it comes in the process is due. So, I'll speak a little bit about that. And then what I'll do is I'll go back through all the questions if there are any. I'll answer them as long as it's U.S. immigration. And then we'll call it from there. All right? So let's get to it. So what is Perm? Okay, first of all, while there's many different ways to immigrate to get the green card, the two major ways are through family and through employment. Now, obviously, if you don't have a family member to petition you, or it's one of those preferences that's going to take a quarter of a century, you'll try to do the employment way, okay? And the most popular, the most prevalent employment-based petition is what's called EB3, Employment-Based Third Preference, okay? So we're not talking about EB1. We're not talking about EB2, EB3. Okay, now EB3 starts with the Perm. Okay, the Perm is the beginning of an employment-based petition for the green card. Okay, so what does Perm actually do? What's the whole purpose of it? Well, the bottom line is that Perm will show that there's no available U.S. workers for the petition. Okay, for the position, not petition. Okay, that's what Perm is. Okay, and I know you're thinking, well, of course there's going to be U.S. positions that are available. Well, that's the whole magic of preparing it, okay? And that's the whole purpose of preparing it, is to go through the whole process to show that. Okay, now there's other petitions and applications you have to do afterwards in which to get the green card. But the Perm is by far the most important, okay? And it's the hardest hurdle to get over. But once you got over that, then I wouldn't say you're home free, but things are quite a bit easier after, okay? Not that it's easy. Nothing's easy in U.S. immigration law, okay? Which reminds me, sometimes people will email me, they go, can you give me the easiest way to immigrate to the U.S.? I say, well, don't go to the U.S., go somewhere else, okay? It's always difficult, but that's what we do, okay? So, the Perm is very, very important how it is prepared, okay? I've been doing immigration law for over 30 years now, and I've never seen, not once, if you did this, let me know, but I've never seen someone successfully do a Perm without an immigration attorney. I'm just telling you, okay? Every word, every number, every correlation in the form has to be done in such a manner that there's more likely than not the Perm will be approved. If there's one little mistake, it could ruin the Perm and it could harm the chances of fixing it later on. So if there was ever a time that you need to get an immigration attorney who knows what they're doing, it's when the Perm is being done. Okay. So the Perm has to, of course, start with an employer who's willing to petition you for a job. If the employer is not willing, or you don't have a real employer, you're not doing the Perm. You have to have a real job with a real position with a real employer. That's where the Perm begins, okay? So the Perm begins with that position, which again, when I'm preparing these, I help draft the exact words of the position, what the duties will be, and in doing that, you have to analyze the employer, the potential employee. You have to analyze the prevailing wage. You have to analyze the ability to pay, because that's an issue that comes up with the next petition. I've had lawyers who have done this. They do a successful perm and they think they're home free. And then when the I-140, that's the next petition, when the I-140 comes, they find out that the employer doesn't have the ability to pay, which is a term of art, an immigration term of art. They don't have the ability to pay the position that's coming in, and then the I-140 gets denied, which means the perm is useless. Okay? So when you're doing the perm, you not only have to look at everything necessary to get the perm approved, you have to look down the line at what's required for the I-140 petition to make sure that that gets approved based on what you're doing with the perm. And then, of course, you have to look down the line to the next petition, which is the adjustment or consular processing, in order to make sure that, in fact, you qualify for that. So basically, when you're doing the perm, you have to kind of look in the future at the other petitions as well, to make sure that everything goes hunky-dory smooth, okay? Because, you might get a successful perm, but if you can't get the other ones that are successful, what is the use, okay? Now, once the perm goes through, which, by the way, is going to take about 6 months to a year, give or take, you can move on to the other petitions, okay? Just a second. I'm a year, give or take. You can move on to the other petitions. Okay? Just a second. I'm getting no. Everything pops up on the top of my screen, but there we go. Now we can talk without interruption. Okay, so when the perm goes through and you do the I-140 and then you do the adjustment, the bottom line is you'll get the green card. And then, of course, you have to work permanently for the company that petitioned you. You don't have to really, you actually do not have to work for them one day until you get the green card. And then you have to work for them permanently. And then the next question everybody always asks is, well, what do you mean permanently? Well, you have to intend to work permanently, but should something happen, 6 months, a year, whatever, you don't like each other, you can go your own way, they can go their way. But obviously, you have to work for them with the intention of working permanently. That's what the whole petition is. Okay? So that, in a nutshell, is what perm is and why it needs to be done so carefully. There's also one other item which is of importance. There's a lot of items that are important, but this particular one. When you are being petitioned and are doing the perm, and, again, technically it's not you doing the perm, it's the employer. The employer has to pay the attorney's fees and the advertising fees. The advertising fees are usually around $1,000, give or take. The attorney's fees, give or take, are around, it depends on the attorney, but maybe $4,500 to $6,500. They have to agree to pay that. You, being petitioned, cannot pay the attorney's fees. You cannot reimburse the employer for the attorney's fees. You cannot take a cut in salary when you start working to magically pay them back. That's all illegal. So if the employer wants to petition you for the perm, they have to really want to petition you for the perm because they're paying all the attorney's fees. I've had people who have come in and they get an employer that's willing to petition them, and they don't even tell them they need to be petitioned. Okay? I've had ones that have said that they'll petition them, but then they'll pay all the fees, they being the beneficiary. And again, illegal, it won't work. And obviously, those laws were originally passed to dissuade perms from going forward, because generally people will, try to find a U.S. worker, one authorized to work here, rather than pay, $8,000 to petition someone else. but it's all doable. It's just a matter of putting all the pins in the right places. Okay? All right, so there we go. Okay, let me scroll back to the beginning of everybody joining and see if we have any questions. Okay? By the way, if you do have a question, now is the time to ask, because when I get to the bottom, that's when I say adios. Okay, let's see. Scrolling through. Thanks for your patience while I scroll through. How's everybody's beginning of the week? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Now's where you have to be patient while I scroll through and see if we have any questions. There's no other fast way of doing it. I just have to scroll. Just a minute. Well, a lot of people that joined, but not a lot of questions. You know, it is Monday morning, so I got you. You know, just had a nice weekend and you're tired. Okay, let me see. Okay, I don't think we have a lot of questions today, which is okay. Sometimes we have a lot of questions, sometimes we don't. I'm scrolling through a lot of names. Okay. Anywho, if you do have any questions afterwards, yeah, unless I pass it. If you do have any questions later on, let me pin my contact here. There you go. You can just message me. I'll be happy to answer. I do get to them within a day or so, sometimes 2 days. And then we go from there. Let's see. Okay, I think that'll do it. All right, everybody, have a good rest of your Monday. Talk to you later.